Are we live?
It could be. I don't know. I'm always waiting on that.
Somebody to pop in?
Or the numbers to start going across the screen there.
Well, I'm going to get started. So, welcome in to We Gon Figure It Out.
Huh! Did you like the huh?
I always like it.
It's the best part of the song. I can see why you would appreciate the musical stylings of, of my huh.
Okay.
It's a beautiful thing.
All right.
All right, so... Well, no one's in here yet, so we get a chance to just talk about whatever we want to talk about, don't we?
No, people go back to the beginning, as they've said several times before.
And especially since we never really tell people when we're going to be in there.
Mm-hmm.
That's the other bad part about it. All right, so one of the things that we do have to let everyone know is that we will do our best to do better. Because we did. Didn't we promise them the world? Like, we promised them we would chronicle our moves.
We're going to do this more and all of this.
None of it.
But you have to understand, when you're trying to adjust to two different time frames of everybody that mainly listens is in, the Central Standard Time. And we're on the West Coast now, so we're 2 hours behind everything. And so we have to try to find a good time to accommodate everybody.
Yeah. So what we'll try to do in the future is make sure that we will be on around this time on Mondays. Works good for us. It'll be a good time where everyone's done with everything. And you know what? During this, like, one of the things that we've discovered is since Facebook Live has kind of taken off, there's a lot of people doing what we do.
Right.
And there's going to always be a lot of people doing these different things. So we're going to continue to... we're going to continue to just try to keep doing what we do.
Right.
And make it interesting. So the next 3 shows, we're going to have a topic of communication. And the way we're going to talk about communication is not typical to how people talk about communication and a relationship for every show. Like, we're going to do one show about communication within romantic relationships for both single and married people.
Right.
We'll do a show about communication with family, which would include how do you talk with your children, mother, father, sisters, and things of that nature. But for today, we're talking about communication in the framework of, like, how do you talk to just your boss, like professional conversations.
Right.
When people getting on your nerves at the office, what's the right way to really respond to them, and in email form, or as well as just how do you interact with teachers, pastors, different relationships that we have on a day-to-day basis. Sometimes we struggle with how do you communicate with them effectively.
Exactly.
And this is one of the things where I think for us, within our relationship, we've always had what we diagnose as what we say is a communication problem or issue. Right. Some people on the outside looking in may think, no, it seems like no. We don't communicate great, according to us. So, so I look at it like this is why.
Hi, Luana.
This is why it's we gonna figure it out, because we're gonna figure this out together. We're gonna try to figure out how we can do this in a way where we can learn and talk about communication, and from different aspects. So if we hop right in with romantic, that'd be, we might not want to do it again next week. Right. So one of the first areas that I think people struggle with communication off top is, like, how do you communicate professionally, especially since there's a different voice that you have and a different tone that you have in your regular everyday life. Right. And then
you have your professional tone.
Yeah. Which, are you doing a professional tone now?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
But I find that when I'm doing a professional tone, I articulate my words better.
Right.
Like, you can hear the inflection of the tone, and then the sound of the syllables.
We call that white phone voice.
That's what Andrew calls it.
I'm not the only one.
He hates when I talk, in my white voices.
No, I didn't say white voice, white professional. But, like, it's what I don't know. Yeah, you calling me out. The way you calling me out, I feel bad for saying it like that. But,
I mean, it's.
But there's
what you call it.
Yeah,
there's Shrine.
Because for me, I've never had to work in a field where I've had to really turn it on that way. There's radio voice, so I understand what you're saying. Mm-hmm. But, like, the everyday conversations, I guess as a pastor, I'm allowed to kind of still be me, because if I use that type of tone.
Well, maybe I have such a drawl to my voice, being from Oklahoma, and maybe you don't, and so you don't have to change anything to make it sound more professional. Yeah. I know that I have a southern drawl to my voice, so sometimes people don't understand what I'm saying if I don't be intentional about articulating things better. Yeah.
So when it comes down to like, that's one part of communication, but when it comes down to the other part of communication, like if you get an email and someone's accusing you of something that you know you did not do, how do you filter all of the emotions and feelings that come into that and communicate that effectively? Now, we're not talking about over the phone.
We're talking about through email. Through
email. How do you effectively communicate professionally but still get your point across? Because you have to argue professionally.
Well, for one, you always cover yourself. So you have to do things like keep your emails that you've previously sent. And so then you can screenshot or refer back to, per my email on 9/8/17 at such and such time, this was what was discussed, you know, and then you go into detail about, and then because you cover your tracks. Yeah. And so that's kind of how you handle situations like that.
I guess the point I'm getting at is like, how do you talk to a person where you still let them know? Because I get what maybe the professional protocol is, but like from a communication standpoint, how do you continue on like and still express that you got an issue, but you know, how do you is it okay to have arguments professionally?
Well, what you have to do,
because that's the way I describe it, was like an argument.
You have to still be professional in your argument, and so that means you still have to be tactful. You still have to, you know, start with the greeting.
Right.
Hello, how are you doing?
If I'm a welder,
that type of thing.
If I'm a welder, okay, and somebody messed up, like said that I messed up my weld, I know I went through the protocol. I did it right. Okay. How do I express that as a welder, that if I did it right or wrong? You know what I'm saying? How do I do that?
So that's why it's important for everybody to have, you know, good communication skills. I think that's why companies will send everybody through communication courses and things like that, so that you can formulate without being rude or, you know, out of line.
What about interpersonal relationships? When is it, like, for you and your experiences, when is it like a time that you feel like you can ever relax and use your real life voice and not have to pronounce everything out and sound a certain way? Like, if someone offers you the lunch, do you have to sit through the whole lunch and do that voice where you talk as though, or can you actually relax and be you?
I mean, I'm relaxed. It's not that I'm not relaxed. It's that I'm just articulating myself better when I'm around certain people. Like, say for instance, I was going to lunch with my mentor, and she's my mentor, so
you never drop it.
I don't drop it.
As long as it's 9 to 5, no matter if it's lunch, you don't drop it. What
about? It depends on who I'm with. If it's somebody like a mentor or higher up, or, you know, my supervisor or something like that,
they never get to see you.
If we don't have a relationship outside of work, then it never comes down because they don't know me outside of work.
So that's what I'm saying. So, but why? Why will they never get a chance to see that part of you?
Because it depends. It depends on where you want to keep the relationship. If you want to keep the relationship a professional relationship and you don't want it to go outside of work hours,
then you keep that voice. You keep that tone.
You keep it professional. I
can understand that.
Hey, Carla, Demetrius, who said something?
Justin said, please become a welder.
So I can x-ray it, Drew. He knows the technique.
Yeah. So what about this idea? Like, so what about, all right, friendships and different things. You communicate, let's just say you and your boss hang out. Y'all done got drunk together. Y'all done went to y'all went to church together. It don't matter, on whatever end of it, of the extreme. Y'all done hung out, right? And how do you adjust back to regular mode then at work? Hey, Didi.
It's so, like you said, it just depends on what kind of relationship you have. Yeah. So say for instance,
can you do that?
Yeah.
You can go
absolutely out. Like if we're like, say for instance, It's me and Rochelle. I'm gonna give you kind of like a real life example because it's Rochelle and I. We've hung outside
Hey, Miss
work,
Vicky.
right? Hey, Miss Vicky, and but say for instance, we have a meeting.
Yeah.
So it comes back on, and everybody has an understanding of that. Rochelle knows because she knows what we're doing, and I know.
So y'all could be out in the hallway talking like y'all talk,
cutting up,
and then go back in there, and
Absolutely.
it's just is that being fake?
No, it's
That ain't
being
being fake.
it's being professional.
It's being professional.
Yes.
So is part of being professional being a little fake?
I don't think so
It's not
because you have to adjust according to what the situation is. You
Yeah.
can't go in there with a lackadaisical.
So where I'm sitting right now is unprofessional. I should sit up is what you're saying.
What I'm saying is you can't go in with a lackadaisical, just hoopla, just type of attitude. You can't do that.
What about, okay, so you got that end of it. Then there's other relationships. There's professional relationships. Then let's just say you're a student, or let's just even say you're a mother of a child. What about the student-teacher relationships that people have?
See, Billy said not fake. There's a time for everything. Time and a place for everything.
It is. So what about like the different relationships as far as a parent to a teacher, or a teacher or a student to a teacher, especially as adults that go back to school?
Mm-hmm.
But what are the boundaries with these things?
It depends on how the teacher sets things up.
Yeah.
If you are in a speech class and they want you professional at all times, you can't really drop the persona of this is a professional class. I want you to dress professionally. I want you to speak articulately and clearly. Yeah, you have to separate the two.
All right. So Carla said, I don't mix friendship with my management. Totally separate. Billy agreed with that.
Mm-hmm.
I think with the other angle of the parent-teacher relationship, your child is personal to you.
Right.
The teacher has a personal relationship with your child that's almost just, not as intimate, obviously,
mm-hmm.
but it almost is like it because they're with your child like 8 hours a day or whatnot, even though they're with other kids.
Right.
And so, how do you effectively communicate with the teacher if you disagree? What is a way of keeping that relationship, communicating in that relationship, and keeping it not only, I guess, similar to professional, but also, understanding that person is personally involved in your child?
Well, we've kind of had a similar situation where we called a meeting, right?
Yeah. But
I think as parents, you have to go in and represent your child, because what they see in you is, how they'll treat your child.
But not over-representing your
right,
child.
But what I'm saying is, if I go in there with a ghetto attitude and I got my headscarf on, no.
I'm messing with you.
Excuse me. But if you go in, pajamas and, just...
So you need to dress up to go talk to the teacher.
I'm not going to go and embarrass my child. That's embarrassing for a kid.
Oh, okay.
For the parent to come in with what's going on with my kid, and, just not a tactful manner.
Yeah. Look at what Tamika said.
She said, I have parents that equally love and hate the relationships that I form. Oops. Mm-hmm. I can't see that. Form with their children. Yeah.
It's odd because they do have a lot, and we'll talk a little bit more about that with communicating with our children, because that's a big thing. The angle of how do you communicate with your children, the right way to communicate with their teachers. We'll talk about when we talk about family dynamics of communication. Okay. But I think that's a big gap. A lot of people don't appreciate and don't talk to teachers and other people that they come into contact with daily.
Absolutely.
In an appropriate way. That's why I wanted to bring it up today.
Well, I think it's very important to formulate a relationship with the teacher from jump. We always go and talk to the teacher and introduce ourselves and things like that. That said, it's important to love on your teachers, but also fight for the rights of for your kiddos too.
And I think that's necessary because sometimes caregivers and teachers get tired, and their point of view may be tainted because it's hey, I don't know who threw it, but everybody getting in trouble,
right?
And that might be the angle they have to come at, you know? And so you have to come in and say, well, my kid's not like that.
And then we hold teachers to such a high standard. It's like they're never allowed.
We don't pay them like that, though.
Right, exactly. And it's like we treat them like they're never allowed to have a bad day.
Yeah.
And they're just human, too, who are dealing with, 25 to 30 something students at one time. And
so when communicating with them, those are things to kind of keep in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you're communicating with someone, I think, and just not cross that boundary.
Right. Always keep it professional.
I think, and that's a key fact. Like so many people cross boundaries with people and get in their own emotion. You disciplined my kid, or you did this, and they lose all sense of communication, like all their communication skills. It's about because communication is that two-way thing, right?
It is.
And so if you go in with an attitude, I'm going to give them a piece of my mind. Are you ready for them to receive, like for them to give you a piece of theirs?
Right, because to be honest with you, we don't know what our kids are doing at schools.
Yeah.
We go and sometimes our kids put on a facade here at home, and then they go and act a complete fool at the school. Yeah. Now, so I say when you go to the school, you go in with the mindset that I want to hear the teacher side of the story. I want to hear the student side of the story, because you've already heard your child. So you need to hear both sides and be able to formulate what's going on after that.
If you're going to effectively communicate something, and that's one of the cases I would say you definitely have to practice it.
Mm-hmm.
Like you need to rehearse what you're going to say, do the method where you write it down, wake up the next morning. If it's still legit, then you know what I'm saying? But like if you...
Right, because sometimes you'll come home and just already, you'll have an attitude.
You can't be like the skit Kevin Hart's mama, you know what I'm saying? Where you write a note telling
the teacher, right.
Yeah. But I think there's a lot of different things there's a lot of different ways. Here's one that I just thought of off the top of my head, and we ain't gonna stay on it long.
Okay.
We're not gonna, because it goes from it goes to a little bit lighter to a little bit serious. But how we communicate with authority figures in general gets us in trouble. So like we can separate management at work, we can separate the teacher and put that in perspective. But we get pulled over. Or if the police show up at the house because you're arguing, or if your kids call the police on you because you threaten to whoop them or something like that, how we communicate with authority, with the law, is also something to think about, because now there's a spirit of fear that kind of drapes, especially the urban community, when it comes to when police show up at the door or when the police pull you over.
Right.
And that's something we got to think about, how we're going to choose to communicate, regardless of how someone is communicating to us. I'm not going to stay on it because I know that one can go a whole different topic.
Right.
But I wanted to bring it up as it came to my head.
But it's still, the matter of being professional. When you get pulled over, it's about stopping, breathing, getting yourself in check, and, speaking to the officer with clarity, for one.
Yeah.
Act like you have some sense. You know what I mean? And, going from there.
Carla said something. Well, hold on, let's go back because I don't want to skip. Tamika said something there, right there.
Okay. She said, as a parent, I remain respectful. As a provider, I hold my tongue when they give me a piece of their mind. Yes. Calm them down and then we can talk.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so with, what do you got there?
Carla said, let's be honest. Some children are different in and out of their parents' presence.
Oh, definitely.
And then she said, yes, Regina, you took it out.
Took
the words out of my mouth, basically.
There's another relationship I wanted to put out there. And this one is personal, obviously, to me. But it's the pastor, is the spiritual relationships you have.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so especially pastor to, I don't want to say parishioner, just pastor, like as a pastor to member.
Okay.
Or just even as a person who's even playing a role as someone who's helping disciple you. Like, so if it's a lay pastor or a deacon or something. I think the reason I wanted to bring that up is because we sometimes do cross lines with people who we view as being a spiritual leader in our life.
Okay.
And we may depend on them too much for too many different things.
Absolutely.
And so we may tend to call them before we call on God. We may tend to call them at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and expect
an answer.
Spirit, like you expect them, like I've had people expect me to be in full-fledged, like preacher mode. It's 3 o'clock in the morning, Right. And so understanding those boundaries, understanding the boundary of, let's just say I'm a man. There's some things that as a female, you can't look to me as a pastor. Even if I'm your pastor and you love how well I can preach, or you love this and another, there's some things you can't call me at 2 o'clock in the morning or 1 o'clock in the morning with period.
Absolutely.
That's
why, that's why they're the pastor's wife most times. And if there's not, then you need to go to one of the stronger women figures in the church and, take advice.
Or wait till an accountability hour.
Exactly.
I think, but even outside of that dynamic of the relationship, I think that it can go vice versa, obviously, because, it can be, the shoe can be on the other foot. But I think that that's a boundary that we don't communicate well with. And then there's the inner circle of the reason why people don't like church, so to speak, is the way we communicate with one another and our expectations for one another.
Mm-hmm.
The lack of communicated expectations. Like, we can join a church group or we can join any religious setting or whatever, and we could have this grand expectation that all these people are going to do all these things for us.
Right.
Without ever saying it. And when they fail to do those things, we walk away and we're church hurt.
Right.
And it's like, but what's the expectation here?
Right.
Because sometimes when we say our expectation, the reason I say that is if you communicate your expectation out loud, sometimes you can see that maybe that was too much for a human to handle.
Absolutely.
So what was you going to say?
I was going to say along those lines, when you're first getting members and having church groups and small groups and things like that, there's appropriate times where you need to have a meeting to tell what the expectations are of the gathering and all of these things, so that people won't hold you to a higher standard.
Yeah.
Tell them this is what you're going to get out of this.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
I think, because it's always in the back of my mind as a pastor that, did I let this person down?
Mm-hmm.
Did I not respond the right way? Did I not do this? And those things are there.
Mm-hmm. But you're a human, you know what I mean? And so you can't handle everything that a person may need.
Yeah.
And sometimes it is best for you to hand this situation off to another leader of the church, something to that effect, because it may not be something that you've experienced.
Yeah. So those are always, that's a good thing. I would say another group of people well, I don't want to get into family because we're going to talk about family.
Right.
So that covers our communication talk for today.
Right.
As far as just the way we communicate with people, I think it's just we'll always come back on all three of these shows as we talk about communication to this main point of you need to be ready to converse. You need to be ready to hear someone, and being quick to hear is something that it takes a long time. It doesn't take a long time, but it's not as hard as we may think.
Quick to listen and slow to speak.
One of the biggest things is, I think for me, going into a profession, we talked about professional and then just some of the small interpersonal relationships that you have with people that you may encounter every day. I think undivided attention is becoming like a lost, it's almost becoming an art now to be able to give someone your undivided attention.
Right.
Because I'm like, for example,
because everybody is so distracted with phones and technology and things. With
me, I'm the type of person that I really do need you to pay attention, because I feel like if I'm going to speak, there's going to be a value to it. So I view a value in my words. So I like undivided attention, where some people are like, hey, let me do 60 other things while I'm listening to you. Trust me, I got you. And I'm like,
okay.
And then, but on the same token, I could turn around and then be like, hey, look, the way my mind works is I can do this and I got you. And so, but that's the way I've adjusted. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've adjusted things. So that's the weirdest thing. So we'll talk about that probably, especially in a relationship, because you was about to go relationship. I
was about to go in.
Just get at me. I saw that.
But
you almost killed me.
But
right here, I was going to be laid out for everybody.
But I cut it off, did I not?
I don't know. All right, so
Beth says active listening is hard in a smartphone world.
It is. All right, so we got two more things that we're gonna cover before we get out of here. Communication was our thing. Our extra topic kind of going on is we watch sports a lot here.
We do.
And a lot of people don't watch sports like we watch it. Like, we won't miss a Thunder game.
Right.
We won't, there's that type of thing. You were the last two rounds, you sprinkled in a little bit of the first few rounds, but the last two rounds you were very intensely involved in the women's U.S. Open. Probably couldn't name anyone on the men's side. But
yeah.
No, not attacking you. You know how I feel about the men's side. I don't like how cocky they are about saying that they're better than anyway.
Right.
But Sloane Stephens
Yes.
won the U.S. Open.
Yes.
And so this was a big deal, a bigger deal than I think it got made, because they don't make a big deal out of women's tennis.
Right.
But I think it was a pretty big deal because I believe it was an introduction to a new generation of superstars.
Yes, because you had two women who were in the, in the final for the first time, both of them, Madison Keys as well. Mm-hmm. So,
Coco Vandeweghe is a new star that's coming up. So like that was,
and then you have 4 Americans. In the,
so it's like
in the semifinals.
I feel like that's a big deal because it feels like American women's tennis could be on the rise and could be back. But Sloane Stephens winning from an African American, like just being an African American woman and seeing this young lady succeed was a big deal for you.
Especially with the year she had, she was injured. She had, surgery and came back and everything. So to work as hard as she did and to win at the end was pretty impressive.
Her reaction to the check,
yes,
man,
I loved it because she was so humble, and she was so appreciative of the $3.7 million. She was so. She couldn't even hide her emotions. She couldn't even reel it in. She was so excited. And I thought that was pretty cool. I love to see genuine gratitude for things, and not just this, oh, I'm a superstar. Whatever.
She didn't come across that way.
That was pretty cool.
All right. So we're going to do a segment at the end of the show from now on where it's going to be a variety of different things that, hey, what did you read? You just read this book called Wonder.
I did.
So give us the backstory of how you got to read the book Wonder. And this is a book that you suggest someone reads with their child that's maybe in what would you say, 4th to 6th grade?
I'll say 4th to 6th grade, yes.
This is a pretty good book. You got a recommendation. And so tell us how you end up reading the book and then tell us a little bit about the book.
Okay. So the book was called Wonder by R.J. Palacio. And I came across the book because we went to Powell's Bookstore, which is the world's largest bookstore in Portland, Oregon. And Braden said, Miji, you should read this book. He was like, it's so good. He was like, you should read it. You should read it. So my 10-year-old son suggested that I read this book. Got the book. It was a page turner. They're getting ready to turn it into a motion picture. So that's pretty exciting. But the book was really, really good. It's about a little boy who is deformed in his face. And it just teaches children how not to be cruel and how to be accepting and how to be kind. And I read the book and it was really, really good. Braden has read it 3 times already. He's reading it again because it's required through his 5th grade studies this year. So we're well versed on it, but I think the lesson in the book is to be kind and to be accepting of all people, no matter what they look like.
Yeah. So that's pretty good. It's, once again, we want to try to encourage people to do as much to read. We went through another book, but we didn't read it. We went through the audio book for Trevor Noah's book.
Very good book.
Very good book. He's got language.
Yes, it's
this
it's
isn't the pastor recommendation, but it is a good book, though. It's
a lot of language, but his story is so... Oh, man.
It's interesting.
It is impressive because he's been through so much coming from Johannesburg.
Yeah,
it
Born
really
a Crime.
Good.
Trevor Noah. Pretty good. Gives you a different perspective on it. All right, so that's today's show. The potatoes are ready. So
yes, my dinner is ready, y'all. I got to go and get that out the oven. We're making lamb tonight and homemade potato wedges. And so
lamb, ram, potatoes.
So yeah.
All right.
That's a show.
We should do a song out.
Thank y'all for tuning in.
You should sing We Just Figured It Out. No, that don't work.
No, I'm good.
All right.